गजाननं भूतगणादिसेवितं कपित्तजम्बूफलसार भक्षितम् उमासुतं शोकविनाशकारणं नमामि विघ्नेश्वर पादपङ्कजम्।
An upright industrialist, a passionate educationist, a caring humanist, a spirited public activist, and a humble spiritualist. Shri Manikam Ramaswami was a multifaceted personality. Ramu, as he was fondly known to his countless friends and admirers, touched innumerable lives and made lasting contributions to the many institutions he was associated with. He was the scion of the well-known industrialist family of the late Karumuttu Tyagarajan Chettiar, the doyen of South Indian textile industry. A graduate in mechanical engineering from IIT Madras, Shri Ramaswamy was awarded the Gold Medal for outstanding scholastic performance. As an industrialist, he was most modern in his outlook and constantly strived to be in the forefront of technology at Lloyd Textiles Mills, which he headed. The philanthropic educational institutions he was actively involved, such as Tyagaraja Model Higher Secondary School, Tyagaraja College of Preceptors, and Tyagaraja School of Management, all emphasize on holistic development of students and affordability. A powerful writer and frequent contributor to financial dailies, Shri Ramaswamy spoke unhesitatingly on trade, economic, and public policies from the perspective of a concerned and responsible citizen rather than of a businessman. He passionately advocated and practiced sustainability. He painstakingly created verdant green and barren locales, installed energy and water-saving facilities, and invested in renewable energy and recycling infrastructure in the industrial units and institutions under his care. In addition to being a committed environmentalist, he was an avid agriculturalist. He personally designed and installed special goshalas in all his mills, creating the most humane and comfortable environment for cows and supplying his employees with fresh organic milk. He was keenly involved in organic farming of paddy and vegetables and in promoting the interests of cotton farmers. He played an active role in industry bodies such as CII, SIMA, and Textile Export Promotion Council, chambers of commerce in various capacities, and addressed large audiences and policy issues. He worked tirelessly for resolving the Tamil Nadu industrial power crisis of 2008-2012 and played a pivotal role in bringing about favorable export and renewable energy policies that benefited the Indian textile industry. He also successfully campaigned for restructuring excise duty on cotton yarn and the removal of the exemption given to certain segments so as to create a level playing field. He championed assiduously for the welfare of handloom weavers to see that several measures were passed to support their livelihood and help them increase their earnings. He was also active on the international stage and served as honorary consul to the Republic of Maldives, where he helped with post-tsunami relief, and to Federal Republic Ethiopia, where he worked tirelessly to help develop the then-fledged textile industry. In short, Shri Ramaswamy was a rare example of the trusteeship that Mahatma Gandhi envisioned and championed.
மாசிலா மாணிக்கமாய் வாழ்ந்தவரை நினைந்திருப்போம். மாசிலா மாணிக்கமாய் வாழ்ந்தவரை நினைந்திருப்போம். மற்றவரை உயர்த்திடவே நினைத்தவர்க்கு கரம் குவிப்போம். மற்றவரை உயர்த்திடவே நினைத்தவர்க்கு கரம் குவிப்போம். அவர் நடந்த அடிச்சுவட்டில் நாமும் தடம் பதிப்போம். ஆதவனின் ஒளியாய் என்றும் வழி நடத்த வேண்டுவோம். ஆதவனின் ஒளியாய் நம்மை வழி நடத்த வேண்டுவோம். நம்மை வழி நடத்த வேண்டுவோம்.
I invite Shri B.T. Bangera, Chairman, Board of Governors of Tyagaraja School of Management and Managing Director, High Tech Array Limited, to deliver the welcome address.
We every year hold this memorial program. This is the fourth year we are holding this program. In fact, because of this COVID-19 thing last year and this year we are holding it virtually online. First of all, let me distinguished speaker today, Shri Subroto Bagchi, Chairman, Odisha Skill Development Authority. Let me also extend a warm welcome to Shri Ravi Sam, who was very close to Ramu and with all business institutional associations, and they had a lot of things in common, and for a long Saima. And today, in fact, Ravi is the chairman of South India Mill Association. So, since he has been very close to Ramu, I am sure he has a lot of things to share today. His reminiscences. Happy to share it. Let me also extend warm welcome to Ramu's family, Mrs. Valli Ramaswami and his daughter, Miss Vishala Ramaswami, and other family members. I would like to extend warm welcome to all the members of the Board of Directors of Loyal Textile Mills, Velangiri, and the management team, and as well as the employees of Loyal family. In fact, this was his institute. Welcome to Director, Tyagaraja School of Management, Dr. Murli Sambasivan, and all the I would like to extend welcome to of various trade organizations, industry organizations like the CIA, Medicia, management institutions, where he has been very active. And finally, let me extend a warm welcome to all the people who are attending today, invitees and other people. Our distinguished speaker today, Ms. Shri Subroto Mukherjee, has chosen a very interesting and significant topic, that is making of an entrepreneur. By the way, this subject has been very close to the of Ram, and he himself has been a great entrepreneur throughout his life career. He must be, in fact, witnessing this program from somewhere, although he is not physically present here. This subject of making entrepreneur plays a significant role in economic development of country. The entrepreneur promotes the prosperity of the nation by his innovative and leadership skills. In fact, entrepreneurs are considered as the prime movers of innovation and growth skills. We are, in fact, looking forward to hear from our distinguished guest, Shri Bagchi ji, on this interesting topic. I once again extend a warm welcome to everyone, one and all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We'll have the introduction of Shri Ravi Sam, sir.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to Shri Manikam Ramaswami Memorial Lecture 2021. We have two great speakers today. The first speaker is Shri Ravi Sam, and he will be sharing his thoughts and the experiences he had with Shri Manikam Ramaswami. I'm happy to introduce him. Shri Ravi Sam is a leading industrialist in Coimbatore and a philanthropist who hails from a successful industrial family. He is a commerce graduate and holds a postgraduate diploma in textile technology from the University of Manchester Institute of Science and Technology. He is the managing director of Adwaith Lakshmi Industries Private Limited, Adwaith Textiles Private Limited, and is on the board of several other companies. He is the founder trustee of Sirutuli, a movement for preservation of water bodies in Coimbatore, which is a famed public movement of the state. As a vivid social thinker, he is actively involved in various social welfare activities. Mr. Ravi Sam administers a Vedic school, the Veda Padashala, in a serene Gurukulam environment. This school has 50 students in the age group of 7 to 15 years, focusing on the propagation of Vedic culture, and adopts the traditional Guru Sishya teaching style and has Temple of God Sri Annapurneshwari in its campus. As a philanthropist, he continues to inspire people across the society and remains a strong source of inspiration for the next generation entrepreneurs. He is the founder trustee and correspondent of Sri Gopal Naidu School, correspondent of Adwaith Thought Academy, and an active trustee of the Shruti Seva Trust, Anekati. His interest in heritage conservation has led to the establishment of South India Art and Heritage Conservation Trust, an institution that adopts temples across the country and renovates them to preserve their original glory and identity. Mr. Ravi holds several coveted positions. He is the chairperson of the academic wing of the Academy of Archaeology and Ancient Sciences of India, which is a part of the Rural Education and Conservation of Heritage Foundation, REACH. He is the past chairman of CII Tamil Nadu. Currently, he is the chairman of CII SR Subcommittee on Sustainability, CSR and Affirmative Action, and also the chairman of the Southern India Mills Association, SEMA. Okay, it's my pleasure to invite Shri Ravi Sam to share his thoughts and the experiences he had with Shri Manikam Ramaswami.
Thank you very much for that kind words. Mrs. Valli Ramaswami, Vishala, my friend Subroto Bagchi, Mr. Bangera, associates, and the larger family of Mr. Manikam Ramaswami, all the members of the loyal textile group of companies, friends of Mr. Ramaswamy, and students who have joined in today. Namaste and my Kartige wishes to all of you. Today we are here to reminiscence a person who is a family for someone, an entrepreneur for some people, a mentor, a friend, and a devotee of Advaita Vedanta. Each one of us probably encountered him in one of these avatars, as you may call. I was lucky that I saw a few of them. I don't know when I first met Mr. Ramaswamy. I'm sure it's probably on one of those warm, sultry weddings in Karaikudi in one of those big homes, when I knew nobody except the host, who was very busy with the wedding, and I was lost sitting in the crowds, when this gentleman walked up to me and spoke to me about the textiles, the industry, and kept me occupied, and so that I don't feel like a fish out of water, and made my day. It just didn't end then. It went on every other occasion of wedding. It was always on weddings. When I went to Karaikudi, this gentleman used to come, and it became like a tradition. When I used to pack my clothes to go to this wedding, I knew there was somebody I couldn't count upon. And it happened till the last wedding that I had to attend in Karaikudi. And he always told me what I should do in the textile industry, what I should tell the machinery manufacturers, which happened to be my father-in-law, how things should be done. And I always wondered why he had taken this interest on me, but it was something at the beginning of a long friendship, which I cherish. From there, it went on to my days in CII. We shared the platform many a days. And whenever I had an event, there was one person who I could count on. I used to call him Manikam, so I keep addressing him as Manikam. I will keep addressing him as Manikam. I used to tell him, please help me out. There is this event tomorrow. I do not know what to do. He just said, go ahead. I will be there. I will sort it out for you. He will be on the stage with every statistic possible, every information. I used to sometimes wonder whether the Loyal Textile Group has a research wing that picks up so much of information and feeds it to him, because it was so apt. And always on the stage, when I'm on the stage with him, there used to be a small slip of paper sent to me by the CII staff. Sir, MR is on the stage. Please control him. In row 1, there is a minister or there is an IAS officer. Let him not say something that will disturb them. And I used to show it to him laughingly, and he used to say, Yananga, Nijatadana solron. But I say, Vandanga, onnu solladinga ipo. But he in his own way used to put it through. And people would accept it because he gave the facts. He spoke what was correct and what was true. And that was Manikam. And I could always depend upon him. And this was the Manikam I knew. A Manikam and an entrepreneur. We all know that what a great businessman he was. He was very modest. He just did not just run a spinning mill. He made products which were unique and which was well accepted. I still know, I have friends abroad who speak about his products who are still his customers, obviously. And we never knew. And always an entrepreneur, you know, as an entrepreneur, you're supposed to develop business, but you don't rarely see that in an entrepreneur these days. But for Manikam, every time I used to ask him something, he'll say, என்னங்க உங்க ஆளுகளை இங்க அனுப்புங்க வந்து பார்க்கட்டும் எப்ப வேணா ஃபேக்டரிக்குள்ள வரட்டும் பார்க்கட்டும். That is never done, mind you, in the textile industry. People guarded it like Fort Knox. There is nothing, there's no secrets in our industry. But I would defy you to go to any industry and tell them to open their doors. They will not. But there was this gentleman who said, அனுப்புங்க அவங்களை வந்து பார்த்துட்டு போட்டு எப்படி பண்ணணும்னு. And this is how he was. This is how open he was. This is something I have never seen till today in my life in spinning. And he always helped me. He said, correct this. Tell them to do this. It will improve on production. We've always heard about, I would like to say, Mr. Ramaswamy's thought process was clearly on scientific development and not merely on charity. He believed in the systematic approach, development based on statistics and data. everything he had on his hand. You won't believe 3 days ago when I was called by the textile, or rather summoned by the textile minister to be there in Delhi. I asked the SIMA office what I should do, what I should discuss. And the SIMA office told me, sir, today I wish MR was there. We could have just managed the situation, and we miss him so much. And you don't know how much I miss him. It was something that happened 3 days ago. SIMA had to depend on statistical data with what MR gave. And that is how up to date he was on information. He was very keen to develop the rural economy and set a separate subcommittee in CII for rural job creation, where he came up with a study to build the model. He supported many Dalit entrepreneurs by making them as vendors as a part of the supplier diversity group policy. Many of the SICK units run by Dalit entrepreneurs were supported by him. He mentored senior management team of Dickey on the entrepreneurship related areas. You would have all heard about this story we were sold a few years ago called Kalavati, which was put in there by the media to portray how the humane qualities of a particular politician. I do not have to mention who they were talking to do. We were not even sure if there was a Kalavati or it was some comic book fiction. But in true life, there is a Kalavati which Manikam supported. I am in touch with this lady even a week ago. This is a Dalit entrepreneur girl, somewhere living near Chennai, or I'm not sure, near one of the loyal textile group of companies. She helped her become an entrepreneur. He helped her with minimum of 30 to 45 lakh rupees worth of business to take probably cut, sew, stitch and return it back to the company. This lady, girl or rather, grew up to set her own company. Now she sort of employs about 150 people. And this is an entrepreneur who never spoke. I don't think any of you know even about this Kalavati. And this is how he worked. And when it came to this district development plan, as we call it in CII, he and I had to head the CII at that moment. He told me, he came out with this idea saying, yes, we have to do. And he said, let's look at these two states. One is Tamil Nadu for leather industry and Telangana for the textile industry. And he gave all the reasons why it has to be in these two areas and how it would help and to create the largest job creation. And mind you, today, I do not know about Tamil Nadu, but Telangana has accepted this suggestion. And today they have taken the same place and they've created the textile park there in Warangal. And this is how much foresight this gentleman had. There was this day when there was a conference which he had to address on the National Human Rights Commission. And you know how the Human Rights Commission always demonizes the corporate world and demonizes everybody. When he spoke and the human rights defenders for this were surprised and applauded him for his human approach in the process of development. I don't know if you know, he worked with the government of Tamil Nadu to improve the public distribution system. And the amount of information this gentleman gave was amazing, which was accepted by the government. All these areas just show him how great and multifaceted he was. I don't think many of you know about all these areas. Coming to mentorship, he always told me how it is always lonely on the top. You cannot share anybody. You don't have real friends. And he set up a mentoring group in Chennai, which still exists. And he worked with them, and I think they always speak so greatly. I'm not at liberty to tell who are there, but that mentoring group formed another mentor group with the wives of these people, because he knew unless the wives stay together, the men will not be together. So that group formed, and now they are here. There's a third group to get the children together. So the children have also become together. So this mentor group is something he worked on it. And and there is a similar mentor group which is suggested in Tirupur. And one day when Tirupur was supposed to be taken into the CII family, there was a lot of objection saying, we cannot discipline Tirupur. And there was this one gentleman who called me and said, Ravi, you're the chairman, you can decide. And I took Tirupur into CII, and I don't regret that. And that is how CII formed in Tirupur. All these were the foresights of Manikam. He was an amazing person. When you know, in every area, you see how much of thought he's gone into. And I can probably talk to you, Manikam, as a devotee, which many of you did not know. I don't think people know. You can see his stamp on this group called Kalavardhani. I don't know if I should tell Mrs. Valli Ramaswami. I know she and her team put a lot of work. Swamiji was there to guide them. Swami Paramatmananda is there. But I could see the fine details which Manikam did in putting these. Every program this Kalavardhani organized was miles apart, miles ahead of any other professional organization's program. The annual day was something which the city of Chennai looked forward to come, where Chennai was full of art and culture, but this program stood out. And I feel so sorry that it's not happening. I'm sure after the pandemic is over, they will really put it back, but I'm sure it will miss that little bit, what you can say, curry leaf, karvapile, which Manikam will not be there, but I'm still, they will do this wonderful program. There was this day when he was in Coimbatore, and he just called me and said, I just came to Coimbatore for some college function. And he said, where are you? I said, I'm just coming. I just saw Swami Dayananda. He's not doing well. I just came out of seeing him. He said, can I see him? I said, I think you can. I'm not sure. I gave his secretary's number, and you call him. Okay, I'm the trustee, but I don't know what protocols they have. You just please call. He called the secretary, and then immediately they told him to come because Swamiji has such high regards for Manikam. He went, he came back, and you know what? He called me and said, thank you, Ravi. I feel this trip is only to come and see Swamiji. If I did not come and see him, I would have really felt bad because I never seen him so unhealthy. I don't know. Now I've decided that I will spend more time with him because I'm not sure how long I will have him. This is what Manikam felt. And this is what is amazing about Manikam. I always call him Manikam because in the true sense, his name is what he is. And today, I really, really miss him as a head of SAIMA. If he was there, I would not have to run to Delhi. I would probably tell Manikam to prepare the note, and I don't think any minister anywhere, even if it is a present minister, could disagree with anything because there was this statistics, this living legend who had every statistics, not statistics for textiles alone, and for anything. And the last conversations which I had with him was I was fighting for the FTA, the free trade agreement, and how it was important for the government to grow. And I called him and I said, please, we have to do this. And he said, "Neenga meeting set pannunga, ungalala adu mudiyum. Micha na vandu paathukuren." Then I said, I don't want to waste my time on the nuances of the free trade agreement. He told me what all can be done, why these people are objecting, and you won't believe it. Few days before he passed, just few days, it was before Navratri, and I said, I'll fix this program after Navratri because I'm committed to Navratri, and we will go. He said, yeah, we will go, but do you think I should send you all the information so you have all the statistics in your hand? I said, no, I don't want it. Neenga varnum kuda. I don't know if everybody understands Tamil, but I hope. I said, you should come along. I can't go and handle this situation with the government of India. And that was my last conversation. And I don't have those statistics. And that's it. And I think now the government of India is really looking at the free trade agreement. So if at all it happens, I think it is Manikam who has done it, and that it's happening because of him. Before I close, there is one thing I want to talk about. There was this talk which Swami Dayananda was giving one day. He was talking to us about this amazing 7-star guest house that exists. In this 7-star guest house, it has everything that you require, whatever you consider 7-star, what I consider 7-star, what you consider 7-star. Everything is there. And there is this huge team of people taking care of this 7-star guest house. People keep coming, people keep going. Every day there are people come to live in this guest house. In the evening, the guys who would take care of this guest house, I believe, sit together and discuss about the various types of people who came and stayed there and went in the guest house. Some people come, some people used to go, leave things as it is. Just ordinary people who came, did not do anything, they just came and left. Some people came, trashed the whole guest house. These guys, if you say, I hope such people do not turn up anymore. They're a bloody nuisance to this guest house. And then there used to be people who used to come, and when they leave the guest house better than what it was. And in that, this guest house is this world we live in, and these are the people who we are. And this gentleman who came left the world a better place. And I think there's so much we have to imbibe from this Mr. Manikam Ramaswami, and he's an amazing human being. There is nothing more I can add. Every day I think about him. I miss him. I miss him so much in my social life, which I've taken up today. If only I had this person, my life would have been a lot easier. And I'm really thankful for Ali to giving me this chance to speak about somebody who is very close to me. Very few people are close to me. And one of them is Manikam. And I really hope Shankara and everything helps you and to give you the strength, Ali, to run this great institution and continue the great work that he's doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shri Ravi Sam, sir, for sharing your memories and the experiences you had with our CMD, sir. Thank you very much. Next is the introduction of Shri Subroto Bagchi, sir.
The second speaker is Shri Subroto Bagchi. He will be delivering the memorial lecture on making of an entrepreneur. I consider it as a privilege to introduce Shri Subroto Bagchi. Shri Subroto Bagchi is the chairman of Odisha Skill Development Authority. Upon taking charge of this full-time assignment in the rank of a cabinet minister, Bagchi has led the creation of a brand called Skilled in Odisha. Under his stewardship, the government ITIs have become a vibrant and a proud institution. A partnership has been created with the Singapore government by which, for the first time in history, 250 ITIs and polytechnic teachers and officials were trained in Singapore. Under Bagchi's overall guidance, Odisha has now become well known in the world of skill development. The state was able to bring home the first ever gold medal in India in the last World Skills Competition in Russia. In March 2020, Bagchi was appointed as the chief spokesman of Government of Odisha in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. His primary role was to sensitize the people of Odisha in dealing with the outbreak through information, education, and communication. Prior to his work with the government of Odisha, Bagchi spent 4 decades with the Indian IT industry, where he is best known as a co-founder of Mindtree, one of India's most admired software companies. Bagchi is a well-known writer with bestsellers like The High Performance Entrepreneur, Go Kiss the World, The Professional, The MBA at 16, The Elephant Catchers, and Sell. His latest book, Sell, received the C.K. Prahalad Award for the Best Business Book of 2018. His books have been translated in all major Indian languages as well as Chinese and Korean. Bagchi has been inducted into the Order of Engineers by the University of Florida and honored for his contributions in management and information technology by the Utkal University with an honorary doctorate in literature, and by the Veer Surendra Shaw University of Technology with an honorary doctorate in science. Now, Bagchi has served the boards of IIM Bengaluru, Indian Oil, IIIT Bhubaneswar, and he currently serves the Board of Governors of the Software Technology Parks of India. He and his writer wife, Sushmita, support the cause for the prevention of blindness, geriatric care and mental health, establishment of cancer hospitals, and school education, towards which they have pledged their personal resources and time. I take this opportunity to welcome Shri Subroto Bagchi to deliver a memorial lecture.
Shri Subroto Bagchi, sir.
Namaskaram.
Yes, sir.
Vanakkam.
Manikam, sir.
Chairman Shri B.T. Bangera, Director Shri Murali Sambasivam, Shri Ravi Sam, Srimati Valli Ramaswami, Srimati Vishala Ramaswami. I see my old friend Shri Lakshmi Narayanan in the group here. And I also see Professor J. Philip, and I begin by paying my respects to all of you here. I'm really honored to be here with you today to deliver the Shri Manikam Ramaswami Memorial Lecture. I never met him in person, but indeed he was a giant, and it is a sad thing that such a man left us so early in life. If only he had 30 more years on this planet, like Ravi was saying, he would make this guest house an even nicer place, an even more humane place. I can't do a better job than Ravi to give my tributes to Shri Manikam Ramaswamy. It feels really deeply, greatly an honor to be here to speak something in his honor, in his memory. When my dear friend Dr. Arvind told me that all of you want me to come and deliver this talk, I really was wishing that this could have been done in person, because I'm so fond of Tamil Nadu as a state, and in particular Madurai as a sacred space. It would have been really, really nice to be there in person. And I readily agreed. Interactions like these are nowhere close to being in the same room together, but with the pandemic, we'll have to do with less, and within the constraints of a virtual meeting, I will share a few thoughts. But I must tell you that I'm nuancing my conversation with the people in this group who are less than 30 years old, actually less than 25 years old. So my voice will be a voice to young people. So if I miss out on erudition, or if I fall short of the expectations of the more experienced people in the audience, I beg forgiveness. It'll be a largely personal conversation, and I would rather have more questions from all of you than to be indulging in a monologue. When I meet young people, the one question that keeps coming to me is, how do I know if there's an entrepreneur in me? So let me begin by that. And it occurred to me that some of you might actually ask me that question. And I thought that the best way is to look back at your own life story. Each person has a rich life story, and you know your story best. So if you look back in terms of what has brought you this far, you may have the clues, you may have the cues. Starting with your childhood, if you see certain things which stand out as your traits, I think that there's an entrepreneur waiting to be born in you. Now, let me talk to you about myself. I grew up mostly in the tribal belts of Odisha, where my father was a small-time government servant. I come from Bengali stock, but somewhere in the year 1900, my grandfather migrated to Odisha, and subsequently the family has been here. But I'm talking about the 1950s Odisha, which was a very remote place by all counts. And within that, if you look at the tribal districts of Odisha, they were really, really in a state where development had not touched them, so-called development hadn't touched them. So I didn't go to school because there's no school nearby. Till the age of 8, I was actually kept at home and I was homeschooled. Now, when you are at home and you're homeschooled, the homeschooling was done by parents, so father would teach a little bit, then go off to his work to the office. Then mother, between her kitchen duties, would come and supervise your work. But most of the time, I was left to my own devices. And I was growing up in a place called Koraput, which is like the, it is as dense as the Brazilian rainforests. Even today, it is quite dense and quite beautiful, full of forests. So when my father would go away and the house was quiet and the mother would do her own things, I would always go out into the wild. And there, I found myself continuously creating my own world. Now, what did that mean? I did my own things to keep myself busy. You may laugh with some of the things that as a child I did, but I have no issues sharing with you. So I would climb up on trees, and inside the trees you have hollows, and inside those hollows you have water. And in that water, mosquitoes used to breed. So I would empty my ink bottles secretly and clean them, go up to the trees and bring this mosquito larvae and hide them behind the bookcase where I would grow them. Not a good idea without your mother's permission, but I still did it anyway. When it rained really hard. And as soon as the rains would go, you'd have streams of water flowing. So what I used to do was to make dams to check the water and take papaya stems, papaya leaves have long stems, which are hollow, put them inside those dams like, sluice gates, and watch the water flow through. The reason I'm telling you this, and I could go on and on about telling these things. So yeah, I'm taking you to a world of an 8-year-old. Through this process, I was basically creating my own world. And in this innate is a capability called transmogrification, which word I learned much, much later in my life. Transmogrification is a very elevated creative capability by which if you see something, you can quickly convert it into something else that others are not seeing. And it's happening in your mind. So a child who is making a check dam out of flowing water and imagining that it's a real dam is actually transmogrifying. So if you look at Steve Jobs, he was the master of transmogrification. What makes Steve Jobs is he could see something and imagine it to be something else. So to start with, when the whole Silicon Valley was thinking about MP3 players, he was already in that thinking about the iPhone. So this ability is a very important ability for an entrepreneur. Now, if you were fantasizing a lot in your childhood, don't take it lightly. It could be your first sign that there's an entrepreneur inside of you. This second thing that I find is, as I look back in time, is I was a very driven kid. Even as a kid, I was very driven. And yet I was very responsible. And I loved my freedom, but I also was very disciplined and accountable. You know, I have my elder brother, two of my elder brothers were very gifted people, very talented people, but they did not have the kind of responsibility and accountability and discipline that I had. It's very interesting. We come from the same parents. But if you are driven yet responsible, if you are freedom loving, yet you are competitive, I think there's an entrepreneur inside of you. The third thing that is very interesting about the childhood days is I was always a very gregarious child. You know, I loved to be in the middle of company. I loved people. If you think of it, it is a non-trivial thing. If you're an entrepreneur, you have to enjoy people. You will be surrounded with people all the time. So the idea that you are comfortable, you're happy with people is a significant signal. I was also, the fourth thing I'll tell you is I was a very adventurous kid. Now, after the age of 8, I had my first school, and these were vernacular schools. There were no English medium schools anywhere near. So I actually grew up studying in vernacular medium schools. But my father, being a small-time government servant, every year he used to get transferred. So every year or every other year, one changed schools. And that can be a very tough thing for a child, because the moment you change schools, you have to be accepted all over again. You have to make new friends. You have to deal with new bullies. You have to, find your way. You have to get acceptance. And one of the best ways to get acceptance in a new school is to show up in competitions. So each time I used to go to a new school, I would begin by showing up for everything. The moment there's a competition in the school for anything, I would go and show up. I would show up for music, I would show up for sports, I would show up for acting, I would show up for debates, I would show up for gymnastics, I would show up for NCC, you name it. The moment there's an event, I would go and show up. And in many of those, I made a fool of myself, a complete fool of myself. So I'll give you a couple of examples. One is for every sport I would show up. I would show up for football, I would show up for running races. And it did not take much time for me to realize that I'm not good at it. If you're running a race and you charge with gusto, and within few seconds, you realize that you haven't yet crossed half the field and everybody else is on the other side, you have a telltale evidence that your lungs are not as good as theirs. So your training is not as good as theirs. But when it comes to music, it's a different story altogether. So when the music audition took place in my first new school, I showed up there, and when it came to my turn to sing, the teacher grimaced. The teacher made a very, very difficult face. Obviously, I was completely off tune, but funnily, in sports, I knew that I was not good enough. But here, I didn't even have that much music sense to know that I was off tune. So I didn't know why the teacher is making a face. I'm just giving this example to tell you that, even in your own childhood, if you have been adventurous, if you have pushed the limit, if you have tried many things, if you believed that you should show up, I think there's an entrepreneur in you. The fifth thing was I could bounce back from adversities. Whenever there was an adversity, and children have great tenacity to deal with adversity. In fact, even today, I find with the people that I work with, the most successful kids are kids who had an early brush with adversity. It could be loss of a parent. It could be a mental health issue at home. It could be a financial difficulty that the family has gone through. It is a separation. It could be personal health of the child. If you have dealt in the early part of your life with some form of adversity that you can recount, which you forget, you move on. But if you can go back and identify and see how you responded, there could be an entrepreneur in you. I have two more points to add. One is, very early in life, I realized that I love the idea of selling. If you don't love selling, whether you are selling your own product or your services, or as Ravi was saying, going sell your ideas to the people in Delhi. If you're not continuously selling and you don't like the idea of selling, if selling actually makes you distraught, then probably you're not an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs must love to sell. And I found that early in my childhood, I quite liked to sell my ideas, sell my thoughts. And as I grew up, this is the last point I'll tell you, is I began to appreciate the idea of money. Money not in a selfish way, but money to see the power of money, for money to become a regenerative resource, is something that struck me, that money can be put to good use, that you can grow money out of money. So when I go sometimes talking to people like you, and I typically ask, and I would have asked that question if you are in the same room today, what do you think is the number one requirement to be an entrepreneur? And people talk about all kinds of things. People say vision, idea, creativity. People say, this or that, innovative products, services, and all that. I said, no, the number one requirement for an entrepreneur is you must love money. Money is Lakshmi, and if you don't love Lakshmi, she has subtle ways of knowing that. So love for money, not necessarily in a selfish way, but to recognize the power of money as a regenerative resource. If you don't have that, then you are probably not an entrepreneur. Now, if this was my childhood, I must tell you that I started my work life at the age of 19, and at the age of 28, I had my first startup. This first startup happened. I'm talking about the year 1985. 1984, many of you were probably not even born at that time. 1984 is a watershed year for India because the then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi introduced what was called the computer policy, the new computer policy. This signaled the start of the IT industry as we know it today. And with that, a new sense of hope and new sense of dynamism came. The idea of entrepreneurship actually came to some of us. We said, oh, so there's a new computer policy. The country has a young prime minister. This is probably a good time to start. And this is the time that I co-founded a company called Project 21, along with two much older gentlemen. They were 14, 15 years older to me. But it didn't stop them from choosing me to be a co-founder, and the three of us started the company with a small funding of savings of 20,000 rupees, which came between the two of them. I didn't have that kind of money. So we started this company, and banks did not give a loan because banks didn't understand what is hardware and what is software. No bank knew it. They only, mostly they were in the eastern part of India. That is where I was at that time. They were nationalized banks, and you needed to get introduced by an existing account holder of a business account holder of a nationalized bank to even open an account. Forget about getting a loan. So the banks refused. We didn't get a loan. What that means is that you had to get the business, you had to execute the business, you had to raise the invoice, you had to wait for the time that the customer took to pay the invoice, and then you get the money, and then you meet your working capital, which is basically a principle for disaster. If you're starting a company, you need working capital. You can't do the work, raise the bill, raise the invoice, wait for the money, get the money, and then meet your expenses. But despite all that, the company took off. We had about 20 plus people, maybe close to 25 people. And being one of the pioneers in its field, that company quickly made its name among customers, and business started flowing in. But you know what? The company closed down. Most companies will close down not because of business reasons. They will close down because the founders will part ways. Why do founders part ways? Founders part ways because right in the beginning, we don't do a value clarification. And we don't ask what is it that binds us together? What is our shared vision? And what is our definition of success? 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when the company is big and capable, what do you want to do? What do you want to do with your own money? What dreams do you have for this company? What we should be doing? So it's not like today, you extrapolate yourself in time and space and say, 10 years from now, how will we define success? If that definition is different for each founder, then there's a problem there. It can be somewhat different, but if it is widely different, if we are starting a company and we today and Mr. Balaji Manoharan has a very different idea of what should be success 5 years from now compared to me and compared to Ravi, then it's unlikely that the three of us will be able to pull it together. And that's what happened with Project 21. The three founders, each founder had a different idea of the future. So 3 years into the game, the company actually folded up, despite the fact that there was business to be done. Now, I was barely 30 at that time, and I came back because, we all are middle-class people. I had 2 kids by that time. I married early. We had babies early. So I went back to the industry. I went to Wipro, where I started life all over again. And 10 years into my journey with Wipro, the entrepreneur again came back. Green shoots showed up. And this time I had to learn from the mistakes that one had done in Project 21. So when Mindtree started, which is my successful entrepreneurial story, we had 10 founders. And of these 10 founders, 2 founders came right at the end. 8 founders came up front, and I was the person who actually got everybody together. But what we did is, first item of agenda was that we needed to do value clarification. We sat down and talked about life scripts, and we said, what are my personal values? What will I compromise with? What will I not compromise with? What is my dream for this company? 5 years from now, 10 years from now, how do I define success? Success for the organization and my personal success. And once this clarification happened, then we set about going, or going about the task of building the company. And this was in 1999. In the course of raising Mindtree, it fascinated me. The whole idea of entrepreneurship fascinated me, and I kept looking at many interesting startups of that time, in previous times. And I tried to study what is it that make good entrepreneurs and good companies. And I'm going to tell you a few of those. First and foremost, obviously, everybody will tell you that a great company requires good people and a good value system. That is common, that's given. If you don't have good people, you will not be able to build a good company. So good people means what? Good people means professionally competent people who also have good character. And that is where the value comes in. But the values are even more important, because when we say values in the context of a startup, it is about shared values, not individual values, but shared values. Values are the heartbeat of an organization. Values constitute the North Star when the inevitability of a difficult time will arrive. And it is then that you realize the importance of values. So people and values being constant, I found that good companies actually had 6 things that they did right. And later on, I added a 7th thing to it, because the importance of the 7th thing became very evident, which defined the sustainable aspect of a company. Some companies will start well, go someplace, and they will falter. And some companies will stay. And what makes the difference between the first and the second category is this particular element that I'll talk to you in a moment. So what are the 6 things that good startups seem to be doing right? I think good startup companies are very clear about their domain. You can't be unclear about your domain. What is the domain in which you are going to work? That clarity has to be there. You can't be in many different things. Domain is a very interesting thing. Actually, when you have a sharply defined domain, the first thing that happens is it helps people to understand you better. So what is the domain that Ravi represents? He is from the textile industry. He's a leader in the textile industry. That's his domain. He's not confused about that. Even if tomorrow there will be something which looks very attractive and nice, but it completely takes him away from his domain, it's very unlikely that he'll bet for it. Domain capability is very important. Identifying the domain in which you will work is very important. You can't be vague about it. Let me stay with that for a moment. Now, imagine that you suddenly see a tiger. Okay, you are sitting in this room, in this conference that's going on, door opens and, in comes a tiger. What will be your reaction? You'll obviously run for your life. That clarity that you need to deal with a tiger in a certain way comes from the instant knowledge about the tiger's domain. But if it's a dog, then it's a very different story. It's a horse, it's a very different story. So when our domain is known, people know how to react to us, how to engage with us, what to do with us and what not to do with us. The second thing I found that great startups who become great companies have in common is use of tools. Tools are very important. Tools are very interesting also. The tools that one organization uses and the tools that another organization uses can actually determine a very different character for the two. And how important are tools? You have to look at it anthropologically. You go to the oldest tribes in the country, oldest tribes in the world, you will find that they use tools very differently and they use different kinds of tools. By looking at a spear or an arrow, you'll be able to say that this is from a tribe in Ghana, or this is from the Red Indians, or this comes from the hill people in the southern part of Tamil Nadu. How we made our tools actually become very important because the tools then convert into, the tools lead us into creating differentiation for ourselves. They determine our productivity. Early stage companies identify the tools very carefully. So I'll give you an example here. When Mindtree was just about 6 months old and we were less than 500 people, we decided that we'll implement an ERP system for ourselves. We didn't need to. Many startups for decades will run on Excel sheets. But we said, no, if you're going to build a great company, if you want to scale, then you need to implement an ERP system so that that becomes your tool with which you'll run the company. It was extremely expensive. But we said, this is an important tool and it is our investment in the future. So we bought an ERP system from Oracle, and within 3 or 4 years, we decided that it's not the right thing for us. Again, we went and we switched from Oracle to SAP. I'm just giving you this as an example. But we thought it's a very important thing to do. So whether it is tools you choose for yourself or tools you create for serving your customer, the tool orientation is very, very important. The third thing that is very important is methodologies. Methodologies are about the how-tos. It is your process. It is your intellectual capital. It is your way in which you propagate yourself. So if you look at, for example, McKinsey consultant who is going to do a diagnostic in your organization, and you have a consultant from Bain or you have a consultant from Price Waterhouse, the first thing that will hit you is that the methodologies are different. And why the methodologies are so important? Because that determines the McKinsey way of doing things. That determines the Bain way of doing things. So Bain uses the same methodology in Australia, same methodology in Europe, same methodology in India, same in the United States. So when you have consistent methodologies, methodology of how you hire, how you train, how you build your products, how you ship, how you answer customer complaints, this is non-trivial. It doesn't just happen by itself. It requires top management time. So when you have consistent methodology, it is your passport to be able to scale up from 50 people to 500 people to 5,000 people. Companies that do not scale actually have poor methodology. The fourth thing is quality. And quality is an interesting thing because it is not what you think quality is. It is what the customer thinks quality is. And today, of course, we live in a global world. It's not only quality is not only value in the eyes of a customer, value perceived in the eye of the customer, but many times quality is the value perceived by an unknown customer, because more and more you'll have to deal with customers who you're not face to face with. Steve Jobs is Steve Jobs because, you know, millions and millions of people all over the world, they believe that the products that his company created are of very high quality. The fifth thing that becomes very important is innovation. The world does not need a Me Too offering. Even as you produce something which may be very, standardized, you need to be continuously able to innovate. And by innovation, I don't mean just a product or a service innovation, but innovation as part of the DNA. And in that spirit of innovation, you basically make innovation as a way of life. So you innovate for internal practices. You innovate for external practices. You practice innovation. And everybody is able to ask to everybody else, so what is new and what is different? Last but not the least is branding. A brand is everything. What is a brand? Brand is not just about marketing, the way we loosely use the word marketing. Branding is partly an art, partly a science, and partly it is witchcraft. And what is the output of branding? What does branding do? The purpose of branding is to present your internal values to the external world. Every organization creates value. But without a branding effort, that value is not appropriately perceived by people who are outside of the organization. So brand is a way of unlocking your innate values to be perceived in the same consistent way to the outside world. So these are 6 things. Now, over time, however, I realized that it is not enough to do these 6 things. The difference between the kind of company that Ravi has built, the kind of company that Mr. Manikam Ramaswami built, they were built on governance. So that is the 7th thing. Great companies are built on governance, and governance cannot be an afterthought. The seed of governance has to be sown on day 1. If the startup team is not paying attention to the idea of governance, it is unlikely that that company one day will become a good company. Good companies, bad companies don't become good companies. Good companies can become bad companies, but bad companies will never become good companies. So good companies must start good. And that is again where the shared value system clarification with the before you start the company, the co-founder becomes important. What does governance mean to you? What will you do? What you will not do under even coercion? So good companies, companies that sustain over a long period of time, they pay attention to governance. I think in Mindtree, we were lucky that we had a good set of people, and we were able to pay attention to this whole idea of domain, tools, methodology, quality, innovation, and branding, and finally governance. And the company that we started in 1999 today has 23,000 people. It is an L&T company now. A couple of years back, L&T took over Mindtree. The company has 23,000 people now. with a market capitalization in excess of $10 billion. I'm now going to slow down and I'm going to give you a set of 5 do's and 5 don'ts. And after that, we can take questions.
Yeah.
I would suggest if Balaji, you can moderate the questions because
Sure.
otherwise I'll end up swimming in the questions. So as many of you think of starting a company of your own, you wonder how you should actually, how you should go about it. One of the conflicts that you will have, I would not say conflict, I'll say confusion that you will have in your mind is right after your MBA, you know, along with 3 other fellow students, should you start something or should you first work somewhere? Well, there's no golden rule. But if I were you, the first thing that I'll do is I will work for 5 years. I'll work in another organization because I need to fully understand all the aspects of organization before I start my own organization. If I were to make mistakes, I rather make the mistake in some, you know, in some other place and have wisdom from other people on how to recover from those mistakes. Build a little bit of maturity, build a little bit of professional competence. So first and foremost, it's a good idea to work for 5 years. The second thing is, all things considered, if you want to do a startup at some point in time, then not only work for 5 years, but work for a startup. The inherent, you know, ecology of a startup is very different from an organized company, very large company. It is true that even from large companies, many new businesses can be spawned, new ideas can be created, and people can take those ideas and run with those ideas, start their own companies. But in today's world, you know, the world of unicorns, the world of, you know, the world of 2021, I think the rhythm that you require is very different. And you will only find that rhythm working for a startup. It's not an easy decision. It's not easy decision because you'll have, first of all, hell of a time explaining it to your parents. Your parents will say, so have you got the, you know, Wall Street job? You know, your friend is now working for Standard Chartered or Citibank, or somebody is working for Unilever. Somebody is working for Procter & Gamble. And you go and join this 100 people startup in Bangalore or in Coimbatore or wherever. So you may not get as highly paid. You may not get a structured environment. You may not get the social recognition. You may not be able to marry because your prospective in-laws actually don't think you are such a good choice. But you will have to figure all that out. You know, the startups are very chaotic places in many ways. And only there you can learn how to float above the chaos, be part of the chaos, and also float above the chaos. So working for a startup is a good idea. The third thing that I'll tell you is, right from today, even as you are in your management school, start tracking venture capitalists. The venture capitalist ecosystem in India is quite mature now. And venture capitalists are highly specialized people. They tend to be very domain focused. Earlier, I was telling you about domain. They tend to be very domain focused. The kind of people who will invest in edutech companies are unlikely to be investing in fintech. There are exceptions, but generally. So who is investing where will immediately, not immediately, if you track that over some time, it will actually give you answers to why are they investing. So who is investing where, and then you need to know why. And that will tell you vis-a-vis those new companies that these people are putting their money in, what is new and different that you have vis-a-vis some of those have. And thanks to the internet, thanks to open information sharing, the startup venture capital world is not an opaque world. You don't need to wait, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years into your job or so many years into your own startup to figure this out. Tracking venture capitalists is a very important thing that you should think about. The fourth thing that I would like you to think about is you need to love real problems. The best companies are companies that solve real problems, not imaginary problems. Real problems for real people. You may have any esoteric idea, but if that actually is not serving the real need of somebody, however esoteric that idea is, you're going to really struggle. You can always tell me that, look, Tesla is now, thinking of putting man on Mars. That's esoteric. No, but, even to get there, Tesla first made money. Okay. So before you chase esoteric ideas, you have to chase real problems. I will come back to this issue in a little while. Let me talk to you about the fifth thing that you need to do right. And I really alluded to it a little while ago when I talked about my childhood. You must love the idea of selling. If you feel that sell is an awkward word for you, you need to deal with that awkwardness right up front. Everybody is capable of selling. Some people sell more brilliantly than others. But if you do not love selling, if you ask me, the 80% of the time a CEO is only doing selling. You're selling to your banker, you're selling to your prospective employee, you're selling to an employee who wants to quit her job and go to a competitor, you're selling to your supplier, you're selling to your stakeholders, you're selling to Government of India. So 80% of the time is spent by a CEO in persuading others to come over to his or her way of thinking, and that's selling. Now the question is, what is so esoteric about selling, or what's so great about selling, and what is the core of this whole idea of selling? You need to sell whatever product or service that you're thinking about to real customers. Underscore that word real, not imaginary customers, who will pay you real money. And they will pay you real money for a real value received, and they would do so in real time. So you need to be able to sell to real customers who will pay you with real money, who will pay that because you are actually delivering a real value to them. And finally, it's happening in real time. So it's not like, oh, we'll love your product, you'll love your service, we'll also pay you, but we'll pay you 2 years from now or 6 months from now. No, that doesn't work. So these are 5 things that you have to stay true to. And there are 5 mistakes that people do that I want to highlight to you. Number 1, do not confuse the app as the fulfillment. I speak to many youngsters and they begin by saying, I figured out this great app. I have built an app, or 4 friends who are building this app. And I say, no, don't talk to me about apps. Amazon is not an app. Flipkart is not an app. Ola is not an app. Oyo is not an app. The app is just a gateway sitting on your phone or your computer. But these companies are who they are because they have mastered the act of fulfillment. real customers, pay them real money for a real problem solved in real time, not because of their app, but because of their ability to fulfill. So you go to Amazon, you order something, and Amazon makes sure that you get the right product of the right quality at the right price. And then Amazon enables you to track the movement of that all the way to your doorstep, where a bell rings, you open the door, a packet is waiting for you, open the packet, it is the thing you ordered, or it is not the thing you ordered and you want to return it, and Amazon will put your money back in your account. And that whole thing is fulfillment. So real companies, sustainable businesses must be built on fulfillment, not on an app. App is just a small means to an end. The second don't that I would urge you to keep in mind is don't think that you are the only one who's figured it out. It is always a good idea to tell yourself that 200 kids in 200 parts of the world right now are actually working on the same problem, and many of them are ahead of you. So you're not the only one who's figured this out. In today's world, it is very difficult to be sharply original. Execution may be sharply original, but figuring out something, you are not the only one. Now, when you think that you are not the only one, it gives you urgency. And secondly, it also drives you to fulfillment, figuring out the fulfillment. The third don't that I would share with you is don't overestimate the idea. You know, I have this fantastic idea, means nothing to me. Always underestimate the power of the idea and always focus on the execution. Those 200 kids who are working in China and in Japan and in Singapore and in Germany and Korea and in Canada and Berlin and in the Silicon Valley, they're probably ahead of you. But where they may not be ahead of you is probably execution. So don't sit on perfecting the already perfect idea. It will not take you anywhere. The fourth thing that I would tell all budding entrepreneurs is don't be in deadly embrace with the idea with which you start the company. So you start the company with an idea or a product or a service. And 6 months into the game, you realize that the market has changed. There's a pandemic, or there's a 9/11, or there's a technological obsolescence that has taken place, or a tectonic shift has taken place. And the idea is no longer relevant. You'll not believe how many entrepreneurs I meet every day who can't let go of the idea at that stage. And this is what I call a deadly embrace. You know, what happens is there's a person drowning at the deep end of the swimming pool, and somebody else jumps in. And the first thing that the drowning man does is to hold the savior in a tight embrace, and then both of them go down. That's called a deadly embrace. So an expert rescue person knows not to lend himself or herself to a deadly embrace. So when you see 6 months into the game, or 1 year into the game, or 2 years into the game, that the reality has changed, the cheese has moved, don't start, obsessing, don't obsess with the original product or service which you had started. You need to abandon that. So you need to tell yourself that you are building a company which will actually create many products, many services, many ideas that will come and go. So this one idea is not what will define you over 5, 10, 20 years. It's not without reason that, it's not without no reason that the Oyo guy has shifted many times. It's not without reason that the Ola guy from taxi aggregation to auto aggregation is now thinking about electric scooters. So maybe 20 years from now, he's in a completely different business. The fifth thing, and this is my last point to you, that you should not do is you should not confuse the business with the business of business. There is business. So if you look at Ravi's business is textiles. But what is Ravi's job? Ravi's job 98% of the time is to look at the business of business, not the business. If you become too obsessed with the business, you will not know how to run the other factors that govern that business. Then you'll be actually deer in front of headlights. So if you look at Ravi's business, it is not textiles to begin with, its people. It is about knowing competition. It is about managing the stakeholders like the government, like industry associations. It is about knowing the unstated needs of the unstated customer. It is about knowing about governance. It is knowing about 200 other things that is not about textiles. So Ravi is who he is because he understands the business of business. And that is why I go back to the first point that I made to you, that it's a good idea to work for 5 years, because in those 5 years, you will actually understand the business of business. How do you hire? How do you fire? How do you actually deal with competition, ugly competition sometimes? How do you deal with regulators? How do you actually, learn how to change the direction of your vessel in real time when there's a storm coming your way? How do you build resilience? So it is not just a business, it is the business of business. If you look at Mr. Ambani, you look at Mr. Premji, you look at Mr. Narayan Murthy, you look at Elon Musk, you look at Steve Jobs, you look at, the new unicorns that have come up, they all early on figure out the business of business. Don't think that the business is the only thing. So with this, let me pause and let me open myself up to your questions. Balaji, please take over.
Thank you, sir. So
and also in this, I would request Ravi to please join in. Don't let me to the wolves. So please use your wisdom and your sagacity and your ability also to share your thoughts. So it's not just me. Let's keep it as informal as possible.
Siddhartha, you can handle. I will, of course, be there. Thank you.
We have received a lot of questions, sir. The first question is from Sweta. Hello, sir. I'm Sweta. What inspired you to start a technology company? Which means he's asking, how do you identify that way back in 1998, you identify that in future, the businesses will be software enabled or software constrained. So that's what.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you, Sweta, for reading that document that I had shared with you. And so you clearly have picked that up from there. Look, again, it goes back to domain. I came into the IT industry. By the way, I started my life in a textile mill. And that's my, my point of commonality with many of you here, particularly Sam and of course the Ramaswamy family. I started my life as a management trainee in the erstwhile DCM group, which was at that time the 7th largest conglomerate in the country. They no longer are in that position. And one of the businesses was textiles. So for the first 5 years of my life as a management trainee in DCM was in a textile mill. But after that, it was very stifling for me because textile was a very controlled commodity. You wouldn't even understand the meaning of control. Actually, the government pretty much determined your input and your output and your pricing. So that stifled the industry. And also it was a smokestack industry at that time, very different from how it is managed in down south, which is very progressive. Okay. And so it was, the plants were very old, the workers were very unhappy, too much of union politics at that time, and market was kind of stale. So I was getting restless and I joined the IT industry, which is just coming up. And from that point onwards, the IT industry pretty much defined my domain. So 1981, I joined the IT industry. And as I was telling you earlier, 1985 is when I had my startup, and the startup failed. And 1999 is when Mindtree began. So you can see that it is the staying in the IT industry helped me to understand the business of business. And to your question, I will just add one more thing, a very important thing. And Sweta, thank you for that question. Most entrepreneurs must understand how to work in a future backward manner, not in a present forward manner. You imagine a future based on certain patterns. You see patterns unfolding. Okay. And in 1999, when Mindtree was co-founded, actually we started conceptualizing the company in 1998. We saw many things change. We saw the opening up of the economy. We saw the world becoming one place. We saw that both embedded software and application software will actually determine everything that will be true about the future world. And we also realize how critically dependent the world will become on India, thanks to what is known as the Y2K problem. When the Y2K problem came up, India became mainstream. We didn't have to anyway, from that point onwards, explain to somebody, where is India? So we saw all these patterns. We saw that software will be the critical differentiator for every business. Let me give you a small example. So you have two equally good hospitals in Madurai. So both of them deliver equally good healthcare, but one has a better ERP systems that actually helps them to raise the customer bill quicker than the other hospital. You get the discharge quicker from that hospital. Now, you'd find that the organization, the company, the institution has a better software, not just the product, not just the services, will be more chosen by the customer. So differentiation, critical differentiation, not differentiation, critical differentiation will come from technology, whatever may be the product or service. So when we read these as patterns, then you are able to say, oh, so this is the kind of future that will unfold. And then you are able to seize your place in that future. And when you look at that place in the future, since you are all management graduates, you'd be very comfortable with the 2x2 graphs, right? So always do an XY graph. And on the Y side, you plot your love. And on the X side, you plot your competence. And you'll find 4 quadrants there. At the bottom left, bottommost quadrant, you will have low love and low competence. Don't touch that. Then on top of it, you will have high love and poor competence. Not a good idea. And then on the right side bottom, you'll have high competence and low love. Not a good idea again. And then you will find on the right hand side on top, high love and high competence. You love something deeply and you are highly competent in it. So that's your magic quadrant. And so you jump into that. So when we started the company, we are looking at the company in a future backward manner. And we knew that we love technology and we're competent in technology. So we're operating in the top right-hand side of the quadrant, high love and high competence. Sam, Ravi, would you like to add something?
No, Subroto, go ahead. I will come back after you finish that. I will add after you finish.
How are you doing on time?
We have enough time. I think a lot of people wanting to listen. They're all students. No hurry.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. The next question is from Pooja Chandrasekharan. Good morning, sir. It's indeed exciting to know, your Vizag trip experience. Before the co-founders of the Mindtree had it, and how do we arrive at the core values and building the team? The question is, how do you think a professional should balance between a job satisfaction and satisfying the job?
Job satisfaction and satisfying a job. How can you satisfy a job? You can satisfy a human being, but how can you satisfy a job? So, the moment you say, I want to satisfy a job, you are basically performing below your capability. You are actually in the bottom left-hand part of the quadrant, okay? Where you will get driven there, where you don't love something and you lose your competence gradually. Because a job is an inanimate thing. If you are reducing yourself to satisfying your job, you will soon be in drudgery. Okay. Now comes job satisfaction. Okay. So everybody at the end of MBA wants job satisfaction. I tell you what happens. Many of my friends, their children go to law school, national law school, and they work hard, really hard. The parents work harder than the kids. And finally, they're beside themselves that the kid has got, NLS. And then there is tension and anxiety for the number of years that the kid is there. And then there's joy, great joy that the kid has then gone to Amarchand Mangaldas or Zia Modi's company. Okay. And then within 1 year of that, the parents are cursing that the kid comes at 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay. And the kid is burning out and the kid is unhappy. Okay. This is broadly the pattern of 80% of law school graduates. Okay. And also probably 50% of MBAs. Why? Because they all say, oh, I'm not getting job satisfaction. First of all, you chose to get in there. And then you thought that there is this organization whose sole reason for existence is to make you happy, to give you job satisfaction. Now, I must tell you that jobs don't satisfy anybody. Okay. Jobs are not capable of satisfying anybody, because jobs are not human beings. So it is what you make out of the job. You have to satisfy yourself. And here is my most important point to you. In early part of your life, you should welcome the idea of what I call the tough, dirty, and strategic job. Not a job where you will get job satisfaction guaranteed. I choose those words with care. Tough, dirty, and strategic. If it is tough, it will bring out the best in you. Dirty, because that will actually make you a hero or a heroine. Because people will say, hey, look at this person. Typically think of the cop story, right? The cop comes into a crime-ridden place, and at the end of, difficult 2 years, that the place, completely changes. Or the school story, where you would have seen the movie To Serve with Love, and similar stories, where there is this teacher who comes into an unruly, underperforming school, and there's a lot of dirt there, and the teacher cleans up the dirt. So tough, dirty, but strategic. You don't want to do tough and dirty jobs which are non-strategic for the organization. Then you'll not get the respect and the honor. So rather than chase job satisfaction early in your career, consistently volunteer for the tough, dirty, and the strategic job. It is your shortest path to the corner office.
Thank you, sir. Hope we have time for 2 more questions, sir. Can we take 2 more questions?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sir. There's a question from Renka Prasad. He wants some advice or tips from you. So, good morning, sir. What are some of the important aspects I should consider when I present my startup idea to a venture capitalist?
So, I can't give you the answer in a short conversation like this. Go back to the advice I give. One is, don't even go to a venture capitalist today. Go work for a startup for 5 years. And maybe in 5 years, one of your startups will close down. So maybe work with 2 different startups in 5 years. That's number one. And number two, please go and from today itself, start researching on who are the VCs, who are they funding, and for what reasons. Track VCs. Immediately through that exercise, not immediately, over a time through this exercise, you will understand how to present yourself to a VC. But first, it's an outside-in approach, not an inside-out approach. You need to understand, where are they interested? Where are they going? How does their mind work? Why do they choose one company over another company? So you need to understand that ecosystem. As again saying, I have a great idea, I want to pitch, and how will I pitch to a VC? No, that's the wrong starting point. So A, work for a startup. B, from today, start tracking the venture capital world. If you know 5 sectors and 20 VCs, by the way, even if you are not an entrepreneur, even as you are not going to do a startup, even as you are going to join a regular company for a regular job, it will immensely benefit you.
Thank you, sir. The last question is from Mr. Cholavandan Srinivasan. His question is, how to understand and find the purpose of life for an entrepreneur?
Purpose of life for an entrepreneur is very simple. It's to make money. Okay. If you're not in love with the idea of money, you don't need to find any other purpose. What you do with that money may be different. But the purpose of an entrepreneur is to make money, and ideally make money by doing the right things the right way. You can do the right things the wrong way, by the way. But the people like, the man in whose honor we are having the conversation today, Mr. Manikam Ramaswami of the world, they did the right thing the right way. And they made money. So the only purpose of enterprise is to deliver profits and customer satisfaction. And you may say, hey, so what happens to the green planet? Okay. So you have to expand the definition of customer. So customer satisfaction more recently is being talked about as stakeholder satisfaction. But you don't go for stakeholder satisfaction. First and foremost, your reason for existence is to make money, and make money so that you are profitable in a sustainable way, so that you create jobs, you acquire more customers, you create unusual new value, and from stated customers, stated needs, you shift to meeting the unstated customers' unstated need. But in all this, never shift your eye from Lakshmi. Lakshmi, by the way, is a very shy goddess and very jealous goddess. Okay. If you don't love her wholeheartedly, she will abandon you in no time at all. And, Lakshmi, is watching you from a distance, even as you don't know, she's watching you from a distance. And she sees the slightest sign of your lack of total attention, and she'll vanish. So given that perspective, again and again and again, every morning you have to get up and say, how do I make money? Ravi, maybe you should give some, closing thoughts and maybe a different perspective, or push back and tell people where I went wrong. And
No.
I would love to hear you.
Subroto, I probably today, Making an Entrepreneur was the title that was given. And I would like to share something about you. My first meeting with you in CII, when you spoke about your book, which I do quote many times, and I think would be very good for a lot of young people here, because when we get into one of these talks, we are always being told about maybe an Infosys or a Mindtree or a Cognizant. Okay, today we have all the unicorns, but some of that is maybe unachievable when you look coming out of a student. But when you spoke about this person, which I thought you should talk to these people about this housewife in Odisha, who went through all the diversity she went through and finally became an adventure.
Yes.
What is that? Tourism.
Yes.
What a person. And this lady went and stayed in the middle of, got kicked out many times from interviews. And how she became an entrepreneur. So being an entrepreneur isn't everybody. It's only that you have to do it, because everybody cannot be these other names that we put in. If that lady could become an adventure tourism, which is the last thing I would have thought you would have said, there is a possibility. Its only thing is to put your heart and soul. There was somebody saying that how do you satisfy a job? And when you put it very well, if you're satisfying the job, then you shouldn't be there. You should get out of that immediately. That means you just don't like it and you're sitting there. You're making a hell for yourself, and you're also that job is also not going to be 100% okay. And today, at your age, you have the whole world. And today the country is not what it was in 1980s. It's so different. And I really hope Subroto would have told you one or two of those real life incidents, which are really, really interesting. And I quote it many times. And of course, when you spoke about Lakshmi, it took me back to what Swami Dayananda used to say. He said this Lakshmi and Saraswati are two very sophisticated ladies. They would always look at you, and you just, even as a brahmachari, even if you mistake, your clothes are looking a little dirty, you're not looking a little filthy, they will leave you. That's how fine they were. And when you mentioned that, it really, really makes sense, Subroto. And I think that years from now, a lot of these youngsters you would talk about, but I really like you to tell that story and that diversity, how a lady could get into something like that. Please do in 2 minutes.
So, thank you so much, actually. So my whole life, I'm actually fascinated with entrepreneurs. And I look at them and I look at their lives and look at their stories. So Ravi's alluding to a lady who I discovered when I used to write a series of articles in Forbes magazine called Zen Garden. And the genesis of that was I would every fortnight meet an entrepreneur, and we'll have an entrepreneur to entrepreneur conversation on their life, their journey, their lessons. So sometimes we used to pick up unusual entrepreneurs and unknown entrepreneurs. And that is how I met this lady who was running a nature camp in a mangrove off Bay of Bengal, where the largest crocodiles of India are. And here she is. I'm talking about 15, 20 years back. So maybe 15 years back, not 20 years back. So this lady is doing a nature camp where she has tents, she's pitched tents, and it's not easy for a woman to do anything in this country to begin with. And then the woman who's running a nature camp, So you have to deal with the forest officials, you have to deal with the, the villagers, you have to deal with the local mafia, you have to deal with the police. And she is marketing herself and created a position where the domain, tool, methodology, quality, innovation, and branding are all put together. And she has international tourists that go there. So where did this lady start? This lady, like many women of that age, at a very young age, was married off. And being married off is the most important thing for many women even today. So she was married off to this guy, and she lands up in Kolkata, where the husband goes, does his own work. And what does this lady do? She has no friends in a new place, no form of communication. And her expectation is that she'll only cook and cook and cook and clean the house. So this lady watches television. And what does she watch in television? She begins to watch the travel channels for some reason. And then it occurs to her, and this is where the right magic quadrant comes in, love and competence. She discovered her love, and she told herself, these people who are becoming tourist guides, it's a very fascinating, interesting thing. How I wish I'll be a tourist guide someday. So some years later, the couple comes back to Bhubaneswar, and she acts on that idea. Acting on that idea is very important. And there's an advertisement by the government that there's a free training program for tourist guides. She doesn't know what will happen there. She enrolls there. And once she became the tourist guide, after that, she joins a small hotel. And in the hotel, quickly, the guests, regular guests, begin to choose her, ask for her as a guide because she was exceptional. Okay? And she began to specialize. So here is the domain coming back. Specialize in what? Specialize in basically thematic tourism. So there'll be tourists from Europe will come and she will say, I want to go and travel the textile belt. Okay. So you need to know all about weaving, traditional textile belt. Or somebody else will come and say, I want to spend time understanding the tribals. So you need to understand the history, anthropology of tribals. So she began specializing in that. So two things happened. One is her employer didn't like it because she was becoming more important. Okay. People are asking for her by name. So the employer himself became jealous. Second is the husband became very jealous. The husband said, oh, what is the need? I want you to have a baby and I want you to go, I want you to look after me. You quit a job. So she quit her husband, okay, which is a smart thing that she did. Okay. And this is about conviction. She says, if you are jealous and you can't deal with me becoming successful, okay, I'll not do it. So she quit her job, quit her husband, and also quit her job because the owner of that business, the hotel business, was becoming uncomfortable, and she said, I'll start my own business. And she's doing pretty well, in all these years. And I think that she's a heroine to me because she's gone where no woman will go, no man will go to begin with. But why I actually have respect to her as an entrepreneur is nobody can venture into entrepreneurship unless you are willing to pay a deeply personal price. Okay. And very early in the game that presents itself. What differentiates entrepreneurs from others is life will test you with a deeply personal setback. And those who will be able to actually rise above that setback and pay that personal price will actually go someplace. Many entrepreneurs may not speak about it. Some speak about it. People are more open these days. But without paying a personal price, you cannot build a great company. So thank you once again. I'm deeply grateful. It's midday. I'm deeply aware that we have overshot the time limit, but it was a joy to talk to all of you. And I close with my deep reverence and respect for Shri Manikam Ramaswami. My best wishes for the Tyagaraja School of Management and the Tyagaraja family of institutions. I hope that one day I'll be able to come and have some local cuisine with you and sit down and eat some food together, because that is the most important thing.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to hear from you. I'm sure this batch is so fortunate to hear from an eminent person like you, which whatever you said, I'm sure no textbooks will teach those things. Thank you very much, sir. I invite Dr. Selvalakshmi, to Principal, Tyagaraja School of Management, to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Professor Balaji. A profound gratitude to the esteemed chief guest of the day, Shri Subroto Bagchi, for gracing this occasion and providing the opportunity for young learners at TSM to listen to one of the best lectures during this stint here. To the extent that his writings have always been inspirational and exciting, your words today have urged us to explore the unexplored, sir. Sir initially voiced his speech to the young population. He helped them to identify the entrepreneurial spirit in them by checking out on their love for freedom, yet being in a disciplined fashion, by their checking on their love for being driven, but being responsible, and the importance of having the ability to have transmogrification. Their ability to bounce back from adversities, and their conviction over selling, and the recognition that money can be a regenerative resource. Most importantly, the importance of value clarification and shared vision. Then he took us all towards the good things of being a good company, essential for being a good company, including the clear knowledge in the domain area, the use of appropriate tools and the consistent methodology, the perception of quality, not only from the direct customers, but also from the unknown customers, the innovation, which is has to be a way of life, and the importance of branding and governance as pillars and not as afterthoughts. He also helped the entrepreneurs or young budding entrepreneurs and aspirant entrepreneurs to have a roadmap, including the plan for their work with for the initial 5 years with startups preferably, and also the tracking of the venture capitalists, their need to love to solve the real life problems and develop connection and affection to selling. He helped us to also be alert with certain confusions which might arise in this path. Clearly, you have given us the clear roadmap for making an entrepreneur in each one of us, not only for the youngsters. We thank you very much for that. We wish to thank Shri Ravi Sam for sharing his fond and vivid memories of the immortal qualities and virtues of Shri Manikam Ramaswami. For those who have missed the fortune of living under the guidance and the spirit of Shri Manikam Ramaswami, the reminiscences of Shri Ravi Sam has really served as a way to understand the visionary. We wish to thank our chairman and all the members of the board for initiating this Shri Manikam Ramaswamy Memorial Lecture. I should confess that at this moment, when we have so many eminent people around us, we could definitely feel the blessings of our former chairman, and we wish and pray that this continues forever. This whole event has been conceived and envisioned by our correspondent, Madam Manikam Ramaswami, and our sincere thanks are to her. The event was executed by our very able faculty team and our IT team, and my very sincere thanks to them. We wish to thank the members of academia, many of the industrialists and executives from several corporates, including Loyal Textiles, faculty and staff of our sister concerns, for joining us during this occasion. The young friends of TSM, I'm sure, may carry the memories of the day forever. Thank you all once again for this special day and memorable day.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Meeting is closed. Thank you. Thank you all.